The blood on my father's face wasn't fresh, but the shame in his eyes was brand new. I've seen men broken in interrogation rooms overseas, and I've seen soldiers crack under mortar fire. But nothing prepared me for the sight of my 60-year-old father, Oliver, sitting in the dark, shaking because his boss decided he wasn't worth a paycheck. She thought she broke him. She didn't know he had a son like me. Hit like, subscribe for more betrayal stories, and comment your city or country. I parked my rental car 2 blocks away from the house. I didn't want the neighbors to see the blacked-out SUV or the military plates. To them, and to my dad, I was just Hunter, the son who joined the army to pay for college and ended up in logistics. They didn't know the truth. They didn't know that logistics was a cover for Black Ops defense contracting. They didn't know that the software I wrote in a bunker 3 years ago had been bought by the government for a number with 9 zeros behind it. I walked up the cracked driveway of the small, siding-peeling house I grew up in. I had the check in my pocket, enough money to buy this whole neighborhood. I was finally going to tell him, "Dad, you're done. You're retired. We're going to Hawaii." I pictured his face. He'd probably cry. He'd tell me to save it. That's who Oliver was. A man who worked double shifts at the textile factory for 20 years just to make sure I had new cleats for football. I unlocked the front door quietly, wanting to surprise him. "Dad," I called out. The house was silent. Too silent. The TV wasn't on. The smell of dinner wasn't in the air. Just the stale scent of old carpet and something metallic. "Dad, you home?" My flight got in early. I walked into the living room. The curtains were drawn, blocking out the afternoon sun. In the corner, sitting in his old recliner, was a shadow. He didn't stand up. He didn't run to hug me. He just turned his head away, deeper into the darkness of the corner. "Hunter." His voice cracked. It sounded dry, brittle. "You weren't supposed to be here until Friday." "I caught a transport flight," I said, dropping my duffel bag. My instincts, the ones that kept me alive in the desert, started screaming. Something was wrong. The air felt heavy. "Dad, why are the lights off?" Just a migraine, son. Bright lights hurt." I walked over to the lamp beside his chair. "Let me get you some water." "No." He tried to cover his face with his hand. "Don't turn it on." I didn't listen. I clicked the switch. The yellow light flooded the room, and I felt the breath get knocked out of my lungs. My father, the strongest man I knew, looked like he'd been in a car wreck. The left side of his face was swollen, turning a sick shade of purple and yellow. But it was the cut on his cheekbone that made my stomach turn, a jagged scratch that had bled down to his jawline. And right there, plain as day on his weathered skin, was the outline of a handprint. 4 fingers and a thumb. I froze. My hands didn't shake. They went perfectly still. That's what happens when I get angry. I go cold. "Who?" I asked. My voice was low, terrifyingly calm. Dad tried to smile, but it looked painful. "It's nothing, Hunter." I slipped at the factory. Hit my face on the loom. "You know how clumsy I get." "You slipped and landed on a hand?" I knelt beside the chair, looking at the bruise. "Dad, don't lie to me. Not about this." He looked down at his lap, his hands twisting together. Those hands were rough, scarred from years of manual labor. "Please, son, leave it alone. I don't want to ruin your homecoming." "You aren't ruining it," I said, grabbing his hand gently to stop him from fidgeting. "Someone hit you. Tell me who." He stayed silent for a long time. I could hear the old refrigerator humming in the kitchen. Finally, a tear leaked out of his good eye. "I asked for my money," he whispered. "What money?" "My salary." "It's been 3 weeks, Hunter. They haven't paid us in 3 weeks. The fridge is empty. I just wanted to buy some steaks for when you came home. I wanted to make you a proper dinner." My chest tightened. He was starving himself to feed me. "I went to the main office," he continued, his voice trembling. "Mrs. Morgan was there showing some investors around. She doesn't like being interrupted." "Morgan?" "The owner." I knew the name. Dad had complained about her before: new management, cutting costs, removing safety rails. But I never thought she was a monster. I asked her politely, "Hunter." "I swear I did." I said, "Ma'am, please, my son is coming home. I just need my back pay. And he choked on the words. She laughed. I guessed. She screamed. He corrected. She told the investors that I was a leech, that I was lazy. She said. He took a shaky breath. She said, your son is probably a loser just like you, begging for scraps. And when I told her not to speak about you like that, she did this. He pointed to his face. She slapped you. In front of everyone. The floor managers. The investors. The other workers. She slapped me and told security to throw me out. She said if I came back before Monday, she'd have me arrested for trespassing. I stood up slowly. The room felt too small suddenly. The rage was building in my chest, a cold, pressurized, expanding force. This woman, this Morgan, hadn't just assaulted an employee. She had humiliated my father. She had slapped a 60-year-old man for asking for the money he had earned with his own sweat. I looked at the photos on the mantle. Me at basic training. Me and Dad fishing. He was the only family I had left. Did you call the police? I asked. Dad shook his head. She owns the police in this town, Hunter. You know that. Besides, who are they going to believe? A billionaire factory owner or an old man who works the line? He was right. In a town like this, money was the only law that mattered. I'm sorry, Hunter, he said, wiping his eyes. I'm sorry I don't have dinner ready. I walked over and hugged him. I hugged him carefully, afraid that if I squeezed too hard, I might shatter what was left of his dignity. It's okay, Dad, I whispered. We'll order pizza, pepperoni and jalapeno, just like old times. And you won't go down there? He asked, looking up at me with fear in his eyes. Promise me, Hunter. She's powerful. She has security. I don't want you getting in trouble. You have your career to think about. I forced a smile. It was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. I promise, Dad. I won't go down there and cause a scene. I didn't lie. I wasn't going to cause a scene. A scene is messy. A scene is loud. What I was planning was a surgical strike. I got him settled in bed an hour later with an ice pack on his face. Once I heard his breathing even out, I went to the kitchen and pulled out my encrypted satellite phone. I dialed a number that didn't exist in any phone book. Grant, I said when the line clicked open. Hunter? I thought you were on leave, the voice on the other end answered. Grant was my lawyer, my financial manager, and the only guy who knew exactly how much money was sitting in my offshore accounts. I need you to look up a company for me. Morgan Textiles and Manufacturing. I heard the rapid clicking of a keyboard. Okay, got it. Mid-sized industrial plant. Looks like they hold a few secondary government contracts for uniforms. Privately owned by a Morgan vein. What? I want to buy it, I said. Buy it? Like, invest in it? No, I said, staring at the empty refrigerator. I want to own it. All of it. Controlling interest. The building, the machines, the land, and the debt. Hunter, hostile takeovers take weeks. You need due diligence, I don't have weeks. I have until tomorrow morning. That's impossible. Unless you want to pay triple the valuation in cash, nobody moves that fast. Then pay quadruple, I said coldly. And Grant, make sure my name doesn't appear on a single piece of paper until I tell you. Set up a shell company. Hunter, what is going on? Someone hurt my father, Grant. I'm going to take everything they have. I hung up before he could argue. I looked out the window toward the darker part of town where the factory smokestacks rose against the moon. I promised my dad I wouldn't cause a scene. I wasn't going to fight Morgan. I was going to erase her. But first, I needed to see it for myself. I needed to see the woman who thought she could slap my father and get away with it. I wasn't going as a billionaire tomorrow, and I wasn't going as a soldier. I was going to walk into that factory as a beggar. Because if she liked kicking people when they were down, I was going to give her a target she would regret touching for the rest of her life. My alarm didn't go off the next morning. I didn't need it. I hadn't slept. I spent the night sitting at the kitchen table, listening to my father toss and turn in the next room, groaning in his sleep every time his bruised face hit the pillow. Every groan was like fuel, feeding a fire inside me that was burning hotter by the second. When the sun finally crept through the blinds, I got up and went to my duffel bag. I pushed past my pressed button-down shirts and my crisp army dress blues. I dug all the way to the bottom for my yard work clothes, a stained gray t-shirt with a hole in the collar, and a pair of faded, ripped jeans I used to wear when painting the house. I looked in the mirror. I didn't shave. I let the stubble sit rough on my jaw. I messed up my hair. I looked tired. I looked poor. I looked exactly like what Morgan Vane thought my father was. Trash. Hunter. I turned to see Dad standing in the doorway, holding an ice pack to his cheek. His eye was almost swollen shut now. "Where are you going dressed like that?" he asked, worry creeping into his voice. "Just heading out to get that pizza I promised," I lied smoothly. "And maybe stop by the pharmacy for some aspirin." "You stay here. Rest." He hesitated. "You're not going to the factory, are you?" "Hunter, please." "I'm just getting pizza, Dad. Relax." I grabbed his keys to his old, rusted Ford truck. I couldn't take my rental. A beggar doesn't drive a 2025 SUV. The truck sputtered to life, coughing black smoke. I drove it straight toward the industrial district. The factory loomed ahead, a massive, gray concrete beast surrounded by barbed wire fences. Morgan Textiles. The sign was shiny and new, while the workers trudging through the gates looked exhausted and gray. I parked across the street and watched. I saw expensive cars pulling into the reserved lot. A sleek red convertible whipped past me, splashing mud onto the sidewalk. The license plate read, "Boss Lady." That had to be her. I waited 5 minutes, then crossed the street. I walked with my head down, shoulders slumped, mimicking the posture of a man who had given up. I walked right past the security booth. The guard, a heavy-set guy playing on his phone, barely looked up. "Employee entrance around back, buddy." "I'm here to see Mrs. Morgan," I mumbled. "Yeah? You and half the city. Do you have an appointment?" "No. I'm Oliver's son. I'm here for his check." The guard snorted. "Oliver? The old guy who got slapped yesterday? Man, you got some nerve coming back here." "She's in a mood today. Record profits, apparently. She's giving a speech on the floor. Can I just go in and wait?" He waved his hand dismissively. "Whatever. Just stay out of the way. If she sees you, it's my ass." I walked inside. The noise hit me first, the deafening clatter of looms and sewing machines. The air was thick with cotton dust. It was hot, suffocatingly hot. No air conditioning for the workers, I noticed. I made my way to the center of the floor. Production had stopped. The machines were idling. A crowd of about 200 workers stood in a semicircle, heads bowed. In front of them, standing on a raised platform like a queen addressing her peasants, was Morgan. She was younger than I expected, maybe 40, wearing a white designer suit that cost more than my dad made in 5 years. She held a microphone, her voice echoing through the cavernous space. "We have hit 20 million in revenue this quarter," she shouted. A few managers clapped. The workers stayed silent. They looked tired. Some had bandages on their fingers. "And because of this success," she continued, "I have decided to upgrade my office furniture. Because a leader needs to be comfortable to lead you people." My jaw tightened. She wasn't giving them a bonus. She was bragging about spending their stolen wages. I started pushing through the crowd. Gently. "Excuse me," I whispered. "Excuse me." I made it to the front. I stood right below the platform. Morgan spotted me immediately. My ragged clothes stood out against the sea of blue uniforms. She frowned, lowering the mic slightly. "Who are you? Delivery boy? Use the back door." The factory went silent. Every eye turned to me. I looked up at her. I didn't blink. "I'm not the delivery boy. I'm Oliver's son." A gasp rippled through the crowd. They knew who Oliver was. They knew what she did to him. Morgan's eyes narrowed. A cruel smile curled on her red lips. She raised the microphone again, broadcasting her next words to everyone. "Oh, the son." She laughed, a sharp, piercing sound. "Ladies and gentlemen, look. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Your father came begging yesterday, and now you're here. Did he send you to beg for him because he was too scared to come back?" I swallowed the rage. I needed her to dig the hole deeper. "I just want his paycheck, ma'am. He worked for it. We need food." We need food, she mocked, pitching her voice high like a child. Get a job then. Look at you. You look like a bum. Filthy clothes. Unshaven. Let me guess, you dropped out of high school? Drugs? Alcohol? She stepped to the edge of the stage, looming over me. My dad is hurt, I said, keeping my voice steady. He can't see out of his left eye because of you. He tripped, she shouted. And even if I did hit him, what are you going to do about it? Sue me. She gestured to her suit. I have lawyers who cost more per hour than your life is worth. She reached into her purse and pulled out a $1 bill. She crumpled it up and threw it at me. It hit my chest and fell into the dirt on the floor. There, she said. Severance pay? Now get out of my factory before I have security throw you in the trash where you belong. The workers looked at me with pity. I could feel their embarrassment for me. They wanted me to yell, to fight, to do something. But I did nothing. I bent down and picked up the dollar bill. Thank you, I said. Morgan threw her head back and laughed. Pathetic. Absolutely pathetic. Security. Get this garbage out of here. 2 large guards grabbed my arms. I didn't resist. They dragged me backward toward the exit. Don't come back. Morgan screamed into the mic. Or next time, I'll slap you too. They shoved me out the side door. I stumbled, landing on my knees in the mud of the loading dock. The door slammed shut behind me, locking with a heavy thud. I stayed on my knees for a second, listening to the muffled sound of her voice continuing her speech inside. I looked at the crumpled dollar bill in my hand. I smoothed it out. Then I stood up. I brushed the mud off my knees. I wasn't hunched over anymore. I stood to my full height, 6'2". I rolled my shoulders back. The beggar facade vanished. The soldier was back. I walked to my rusty truck, pulled out my satellite phone, and hit speed dial. Grant, I said. Where are we? I'm at the bank right now. Hunter, Grant's voice came through, tense. The wire transfer is ready. But are you sure? The price is absurd. She wants $40 million for the controlling stake. It's valued at 10. Pay her 50, I said. 50? Hunter, I want it done in the next 10 minutes, Grant. I want the electronic signature on my phone before she finishes her speech. Consider it done. But Hunter, what did she do to you? I looked at the factory, at the boss lady car parked in the front. She gave me $1, I said. So I'm going to buy her world. I hung up. I leaned against the truck and watched the digital clock on my phone screen. 10:14 a.m. She was still the owner. 10:15 a.m. I waited. 10:19 a.m. My phone buzzed. A single notification. Transaction complete. Asset acquired. Morgan Textiles and Manufacturing. 100% ownership transfer confirmed. I stared at the screen. A cold, dark smile touched my lips for the first time in 2 days. I wasn't a beggar anymore. I was her boss, and I wasn't leaving. I sat in the rusted truck, the engine cold, staring at the notification on my phone screen. Asset acquired. It was just text, pixels on glass, but it felt heavier than a loaded rifle. $50 million. Gone in a blink. Most people would vomit if they spent that kind of money in 4 minutes. I just felt calm. It was the same calm I felt before kicking down a door in a raid. The point of no return. I looked at the factory. Nothing had changed on the outside. The gray walls were still gray. The barbed wire was still sharp. Smoke still poured from the vents. Inside, Morgan was probably still on that stage, high on her own power, holding that microphone like a scepter. She had no idea that the ground beneath her feet had just shifted. She had no idea she was standing in my building now. My phone rang. It was Grant. It's done, he said, sounding breathless. The funds cleared. Her bank just sent the confirmation. You officially own the global holding group, which owns the factory. Congratulations, I guess. You just bought a sweatshop for the price of a private island. Thanks, Grant. Now I need phase 2. Hunter, slow down. You just spent 50 mil. Phase 2 usually involves lawyers, audits, a transition team. I don't have a transition team. I have you. I need you to get into her payroll system. Now, that's illegal if I hack it, Grant warned. I own the company, Grant. It's not hacking. It's an administrative audit. I'm giving you permission. Get in there. I want to know why my dad wasn't paid. Give me 5 minutes. I hung up and watched the factory gates. A delivery truck rumbled out. The driver looked miserable. I wondered how many of them were like my dad, working hard, keeping their heads down, terrified of losing the little they had. My phone buzzed again. It wasn't Grant. It was Dad. I hesitated. If I answered, he'd hear the edge in my voice. He'd know I wasn't buying pizza. But if I didn't answer, he'd worry. Hey, Dad. I answered, forcing my voice to sound light. Hunter? Where are you? The pizza place is only 10 minutes away. You've been gone an hour. There was a line. I lied. And I ran into an old friend. Just catching up. I'll be back soon. Okay, just be careful. I have a bad feeling, son. My chest feels tight. I'm fine, Dad. Eat some crackers. I'm coming home. I felt a pang of guilt. He was at home, hurt and scared, while I was sitting outside his nightmare preparing to burn it down. Grant called back. Hunter, you're not going to believe this. Try me. I'm in the payroll ledger. The general account, the one for the floor workers, is empty. Zero balance. She's bankrupt. No, Grant said, his voice dropping an octave. That's the thing. The company is profitable. But 3 weeks ago, $2 million was transferred from the payroll account into a miscellaneous assets fund. What kind of assets? I tracked the transfer. It went to a dealership in Miami, a luxury yacht broker, and a custom car import service. I looked across the street at the red convertible with the boss lady plate. She stole their salaries to buy toys, I said. The rage flared up again, hot and sharp. She didn't pay my dad so she could buy a car. It gets worse, Hunter. I'm looking at the pension fund. The retirement savings for employees with over 10 years of service. It's supposed to be in a locked trust. Is it there? It's draining. $10,000 a week, siphoned out into an offshore shell company in the Caymans. She's been doing this for 2 years. She's bleeding them dry, Hunter. If this factory closes, these people won't just be unemployed. They'll be destitute. Their retirement is gone. I gripped the steering wheel so hard the leather creaked. This wasn't just about a slap anymore. This was theft on a massive scale. This was destroying lives. My dad had worked here for 20 years. He was counting on that pension. Give me the proof, I ordered. Hard copies. Everything. I can email it to you, but no. I need you here. In person. Bring the papers. And Grant, bring the termination notice. For who? For the CEO. Hunter, you can't just walk in and fire her. She has a contract. She'll sue. We need cause. She stole the pension fund. That's cause. That's a felony. Just get here. I hung up and checked the time. 10:45 a.m. Suddenly, the side door of the factory flew open, the same door I'd been thrown out of. A man in a suit stumbled out, holding a box of personal belongings. He looked shaken. I recognized him. It was Mr. Henderson, the floor manager. A decent guy, usually. I rolled down my window. Henderson, I called out. He jumped, looking around wildly. He saw me in the beat-up truck and squinted. Hunter? Is that you? Oliver's kid. I nodded. What happened? He walked over, wiping sweat from his forehead. She fired me. Just now. In front of everyone. Why? Because I asked her about the overtime pay. She lost it. She said I was conspiring with your father. She said she's cleaning house. Anyone who questions her is gone. He looked at the factory with fear. She's on a rampage, Hunter. She's calling your dad right now. She's got him on speakerphone in the main office. What? My blood ran cold. She's calling him to officially fire him. She wants the whole office to hear her do it. I didn't say another word. I didn't wait for Grant. I threw the truck into gear, tires screeching as I peeled out of the spot. I didn't drive home. I drove toward the main gate. The security guard stepped out, holding up his hand. Hey, you can't. I didn't stop. I gunned the engine. The old Ford roared, slamming through the wooden arm of the gate, splintering it into pieces. I skidded to a halt right in front of the glass doors of the main lobby. I jumped out. I was still wearing my ragged clothes. I still looked like a beggar. But I wasn't moving like one. I was moving like a soldier clearing a room. I burst through the lobby doors. The receptionist gasped. "Sir, you can't be in here." I ignored her. I could hear Morgan's voice coming from down the hall. "Pathetic old man. Do you hear me, Oliver? You're finished." I sprinted toward the sound. I reached the double mahogany doors of the CEO's office. I didn't knock. I kicked them open. The wood cracked. The doors swung wide, banging against the walls. The room froze. Morgan was sitting behind a massive glass desk, her feet propped up. A phone was on the desk, the speaker light blinking green. Several executives were sitting on the couches, looking uncomfortable. Morgan dropped her feet. "What the hell?" "Security." I ignored her. I looked at the phone. "Dad," I shouted. "Dad, hang up the phone." "Hunter." My dad's voice came through the speaker, tiny and terrified. "Hunter, what's happening?" "She said I'm fired. She said I lost my pension." "You haven't lost anything," I said, walking toward the desk. Morgan stood up, her face twisting in fury. "You? The beggar. How did you get in here? I'm going to have you arrested. I'm going to have you and your father thrown in a cell." She reached for the phone to cut the call. "Don't touch it," I warned. My voice was low, but it carried across the room like a gunshot. She froze, her hand hovering over the receiver. For the first time, she looked at me, really looked at me. She saw the way I was standing. She saw the look in my eyes. It wasn't the look of a desperate son anymore. "Who do you think you are?" she hissed. "I'm the guy who's going to ruin your day," I said. I reached into my pocket. Not for a weapon, for my phone. "Dad," I said to the speakerphone. "Stay on the line. I want you to hear this." "Get out," Morgan shrieked. "Security. Where is security?" Two large guards burst into the room behind me, batons drawn. "Grab him," Morgan screamed, pointing a manicured finger at my face. "Break his legs if you have to. Just get him out." The guards lunged. I didn't flinch. I turned to face them. "Stop," I commanded. It wasn't a shout. It was an order. The kind of order you give when you have the authority of God behind you. The guards hesitated, confused by the tone. "Check your radios," I said to them. "Check your command channel. Right now." "What?" the lead guard asked, baffled. "Check your radios." As if on cue, the static on their belts crackled to life. A panicked voice from the control room came through loud and clear. All units, stand down. Repeat, stand down. We have a code 0. The building has been sold. New ownership is effective immediately." The room went dead silent. Morgan's face went pale. "What? That's a mistake. That's a hack." The guard looked at his radio, then at Morgan, then at me, the guy in the dirty t-shirt. "Who is the new owner?" the guard asked into his radio. The voice crackled back. Identity confirmed. "The new owner is Mr. Hunter," the man standing in the CEO's office. I turned back to Morgan. She looked like she was going to be sick. Her mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. I walked around the desk. I picked up the phone she had used to terrorize my father. "Dad," I said softly. "Hunter, you're not fired, Dad." I looked Morgan dead in the eye. "But someone else is." The silence in the office was so heavy you could have suffocated in it. Morgan was gripping the edge of her glass desk, her knuckles white. The executives on the couch were staring at me like I was a ghost. The guards lowered their batons, confusion written all over their faces. "This is a joke," Morgan whispered. Her voice trembled, losing that sharp, arrogant edge she had just moments ago. "It's a prank. Who put you up to this? Is it the union? I'll sue the union into the ground." I didn't answer her. I was still holding the phone. "Hunter." Dad's voice was frantic on the other end. "What did you say? What do you mean you're the owner?" "I'll explain later, Dad. Just hang tight. Everything is going to be okay." I hung up the phone gently. I turned to the guards. "Gentlemen, please wait outside. But don't leave the floor. I'll need you shortly." They looked at each other, then at Morgan. She didn't give an order. She couldn't. The power had shifted, and everyone in the room could feel the gravity of it pulling toward me. They nodded and backed out of the room, closing the broken doors as best they could. You can't do this, Morgan hissed, finding her voice again. She marched around the desk, getting right in my face. I own 51% of this company. You can't just buy it without my signature. Actually, a voice said from the doorway behind me. We all turned. Grant stood there, looking out of breath, clutching a leather briefcase. He walked in, adjusting his glasses, trying to look professional despite the sweat on his forehead. Mrs. Vane, Grant said, walking past me and placing a stack of documents on her desk. You did own 51%, but you leveraged 30% of your shares as collateral for a personal loan 2 years ago, a loan you defaulted on last month. The bank seized those shares this morning at 9 a.m. Morgan's eyes widened. That was a private loan. How do you know about that? Public record when you miss payments, Grant said coolly. My client, Mr. Hunter, purchased those seized shares from the bank. He then purchased the remaining 49% from your minority partners, who were very eager to sell once we showed them the audit of the pension fund. The pension fund? Morgan's face went from pale to gray. She took a step back, hitting her chair. Sit down, I said. She didn't argue. She collapsed into the chair. Get out, I told the executives on the couch. All of you, go to your offices and wait. If I find out any of you knew about the missing money, you're going to prison with her. They scrambled out of the room like rats fleeing a sinking ship. Grant closed the door and locked it. Okay, Hunter, we own the building, but we have a bigger problem. What? I asked, looking at Morgan, who was now staring at her hands, trembling. The money isn't just missing, Grant said, opening a file. It's gone. Spent. The $2 million for payroll? Gone. The pension fund? There's less than $5,000 left in it. If we don't put cash back in by Friday, checks will bounce. The workers will riot. I looked at Morgan. Where is it? She looked up, defiance flashing in her eyes for a second. I invested it. It's tied up. I can't just get it back. You bought a yacht, I said. And a convertible. And God knows what else. I was going to pay it back, she shouted, slamming her hand on the desk. I was just borrowing it. The company had a bad quarter last year. I needed to maintain my lifestyle. I have an image to uphold. Your image. I laughed, a harsh, dry sound. My dad was eating ramen noodles for a month because you needed to maintain your image? I walked over to the window that overlooked the factory floor. I could see the workers down there, standing around, confused. They knew something was happening. They just didn't know what. Grant, I said, not turning around. How much liquid cash do I have access to right now? After the purchase? Maybe $10 million in the operational account. What? Transfer $5 million into the payroll account. Immediate disbursement. Pay everyone their back wages. Today. Now. Hunter, that's your personal money. You'll never see that back. Do it. And the pension? Replenish it. Every cent she stole. With interest. Morgan gasped. You have that kind of money? Who are you? You look like a bum. I turned back to her. I walked over and placed my hands on the desk, leaning in close. I'm a ghost, Morgan. That's what they call my unit. We didn't exist. Our budget didn't exist. But our results did. I made my money building systems that catch people like terrorists and warlords. People who think they're untouchable. I picked up the nameplate on her desk that read Morgan Vane, CEO. I tossed it into the trash can. And you know what the difference is between you and a warlord? I asked. She shook her head, terrified. Nothing, I said. You just use a pen instead of a gun. Are you firing me? She whispered. No, I said. Grant looked at me, surprised. Hunter, firing you is too easy, I said to Morgan. If I fire you, you walk away. You claim unemployment. You spin a story about how you were pushed out. I pulled a chair over and sat down across from her. You're going to stay right here. You're going to keep your title for exactly 24 hours. Why? She asked, suspicious. Because tomorrow is the annual shareholder meeting, I said. The one you invited all those investors to. The one where you were going to brag about your record profits. Yes. You're still going to give that speech, I said. But you're going to make a few changes to the script. I won't do it, she spat. I won't help you humiliate me. You have two choices, I said, leaning back. Option A. Grant here hands the file on the pension theft to the FBI right now. You leave this office in handcuffs, in front of your employees. You go to federal prison for 20 years for embezzlement and fraud. She swallowed hard. And option B? Option B. You get on that stage tomorrow. You introduce the new owner. And you publicly resign. You tell them you're stepping down for personal reasons. You walk away quietly. No prison. No handcuffs. She looked at Grant, then at the file, then at me. She was calculating. She was a survivor. She thought she saw a way out. Fine, she said, her voice shaky. I'll resign. I'll do the speech. Good choice, I said. I stood up. Grant, draft the resignation letter. Make it sound touching. I walked to the door. Where are you going? Grant asked. I have to go home, I said. I have to change. Change. I can't introduce myself as the new owner looking like this, I said, gesturing to my dirty clothes. And I have a promise to keep. I told my dad I wouldn't cause a scene. I looked back at Morgan one last time. Get some rest, Morgan. You have a big day tomorrow. I walked out. As I headed down the hall, I felt a vibration in my pocket. I pulled out the phone. It was a text from an unknown number. Hunter. It's Clara, Morgan's assistant. I heard everything through the door. Be careful. She keeps a second set of books. The ones Grant found aren't the real ones. She's hiding something bigger. I stopped walking. A second set of books? I looked back at the CEO's office. Morgan was on her cell phone, whispering frantically. She wasn't calling a lawyer. She was looking at a safe hidden behind a painting on the wall. I smiled grimly. Option B was never real. I just needed her to feel safe enough to make a mistake. She thought she was negotiating her exit. She didn't know I was preparing her execution. I drove home in silence, my mind racing faster than the truck's engine. A second set of books. Clara's text burned in my pocket. If Morgan was hiding something worse than embezzlement, I needed to know what it was before tomorrow. When I pulled into the driveway, the house was dark again. My stomach tightened. Had she sent someone? I rushed inside, hand instinctively reaching for a sidearm I wasn't carrying. Dad. In the kitchen, Hunter. I let out a breath. I walked in to find him sitting at the small table, staring at a frozen pizza he hadn't cooked. The ice pack was gone, revealing the bruise in all its ugly glory. It was purple, green, and black, spreading across his cheek like a storm cloud. He looked up at me. Is it true? Is what true? I asked, grabbing a glass of water to hide my shaking hands. The guys, they've been texting me. Henderson. Mike from shipping. They said the payroll accounts just got funded. Full back pay. Plus a bonus. He stared at me, his good eye wide with disbelief. They said a hunter bought the factory. They said you walked into her office and didn't come out in handcuffs. I sat down opposite him. I couldn't lie anymore. Not about this. It's true, Dad. How? He whispered. We barely made rent last month. Where did you get millions of dollars? Did you do something illegal? Tell me you didn't steal it. Hunter. I'd rather starve than eat stolen bread. I reached across the table and took his rough hands in mine. I didn't steal it, Dad. I earned it. Remember when I told you I was working in logistics? Yeah. Moving crates. Supply lines. I lied. I wasn't moving crates. I was building encryption software for the DoD. Defense contracts. Cybersecurity. The government bought my patent 3 years ago. You're rich. The words sounded foreign in his mouth. I'm wealthy, Dad. And as of this morning, I own Morgan Textiles. He pulled his hands away, looking at me like I was a stranger. Why didn't you tell me? Why did you let me work there? Why did you let me beg her for money? Because you're proud. I said, my voice rising. Because you told me 1,000 times that a man makes his own way. I didn't want you to feel like a charity case. I wanted to surprise you when I came home. I was going to ask you to retire. He looked down at the table. A tear hit the plastic wrapper of the pizza. She slapped me, Hunter, in front of everyone. I know. And now you own her. I own the building she stands in. And tomorrow, I'm going to make sure she never hurts anyone again. He looked up. A fierce pride replaced the shame in his eyes. What are you going to do? I'm going to finish it. But I need you to do something for me. Anything. I need you to come with me tomorrow. Put on your best suit. The blue one. I want you standing right next to me when I take the stage. He nodded slowly. Okay, I'll be there. The next morning, the atmosphere was different. I didn't wear the rags. I showered, shaved, and opened the garment bag I had brought with me. My dress blues. The dark blue Army service uniform. The gold stripes on the sleeves. The rows of medals on my chest. Bronze Star, Meritorious Service, campaign ribbons. And on my shoulders, the rank I had earned in the shadows but never worn at home. Major. I put on the cap. I looked in the mirror. Hunter the son was gone. Major Hunter was here. I walked out to the living room. Dad was waiting. He was wearing his old Navy suit. It was a little tight around the waist and shiny at the elbows, but he had polished his shoes until they gleamed. He saw me in the uniform and gasped. He stood up straighter. He saluted. It was sloppy, a civilian salute, but it meant more to me than any honor guard. I saluted back, crisp and sharp. Ready, sir? I asked. Ready, Major, he smiled. We walked outside, but we weren't taking the rusted truck. A line of 3 black SUVs was idling at the curb. Grant had been busy. Beside the lead car stood 4 men in suits with earpieces, my private security detail, flown in overnight from D.C. A neighbor, Mrs. Higgins, was walking her dog. She stopped and stared, her mouth open, as Oliver, the man who mowed his own lawn, was ushered into a presidential motorcade. To the factory, I told the driver. The ride was short. When we turned the corner onto the industrial road, I saw the change. The gate was fixed, but more importantly, the vibe was different. There were news vans, local reporters. Rumors fly fast in a small town. Everyone knew something big was happening at the shareholder meeting. The convoy rolled up to the entrance. The security guards, the same ones who had sneered at me yesterday, snapped to attention. They didn't know who was in the car, but they knew power when they saw it. The driver opened my door. I stepped out. The medals on my chest caught the morning sun. A hush fell over the crowd of workers gathered outside for their smoke break. They saw the uniform. They saw the face. It's Hunter, someone whispered. Oliver's kid. I turned and offered a hand to my father. He stepped out, head held high, ignoring the bruise on his face. We walked toward the entrance. The sea of blue uniforms parted for us. Morning, Oliver, one worker said. Good to see you, Oliver, another called out. Dad nodded to them, dignity restored. We reached the lobby. The receptionist stood up so fast she knocked over her coffee. And Mr. Hunter, they're waiting for you in the main assembly hall. The investors, the press. Is Mrs. Morgan there? I asked. Yes, sir. She's backstage. Good. I walked toward the double doors of the assembly hall. I could hear the murmur of hundreds of people. I stopped. I pulled out my phone and checked the message from Clara again. Second set of books. Safe behind the painting. I looked at the head of my security detail, a former ranger named Stone. Stone, I said quietly. Take 2 men. Go to the CEO's office. There's a painting of a sailboat on the north wall. Behind it is a safe. Crack it. We don't have the combinations, sir. Use a drill. Use C4. I don't care. Just get it open and bring me whatever is inside. Before she finishes her speech. Copy that. Stone peeled off silently. I turned to Dad. It's showtime. We pushed open the doors. The hall was packed. Investors in suits in the front rows. Workers standing in the back. On the stage, a massive banner read, Morgan Textiles, a legacy of excellence. Morgan was at the podium. She looked flawless, hair perfect, makeup hiding the stress. She was smiling that fake, predatory smile. And despite the challenges of the market, she was saying, we have persevered. We are a family here. A ripple of uneasy laughter went through the workers. And now, she continued, her voice tightening just a fraction, it is my honor, my distinct honor, to introduce a new partner. A man who sees the vision of this company. She gestured to the side of the stage. I didn't walk up the side stairs. I walked right down the center aisle. The sound of my military boots on the concrete floor was a rhythmic, ominous drumbeat. Clack, clack, clack. Heads turned. The investors whispered. Who is that? Is that a general? I walked up the stairs. I stood next to her at the podium. I towered over her. She looked at my uniform. She looked at the medals. Her smile faltered. She hadn't expected this. She expected the beggar in a suit. She didn't expect the United States Army. Thank you, Morgan, I said into the mic. My voice boomed. I looked out at the crowd. My name is Major Hunter, I said. And I don't see a vision here. I see a crime scene. Morgan gasped. She reached for the mic. He's joking. I grabbed her wrist. Gently, but with a grip of iron. I'm not finished, I said. And then, I saw Stone entering the back of the hall. He was holding a thick, black ledger. He caught my eye and nodded. The second set of books. I smiled. Morgan, I said, leaning in so only she and the microphone could hear. Did you really think I'd let you resign? The air in the assembly hall vanished. Hundreds of people, investors, workers, reporters, sat frozen, their eyes darting between the woman in the white suit and the soldiers standing beside her. My grip on Morgan's wrist was the only thing keeping her upright. She was trembling, a subtle vibration that traveled up her arm to mine. Let go of me, she hissed through her teeth, smiling for the cameras. You promised. You said I could resign. I promised you option B, I whispered back. But you lied to me, Morgan. You kept secrets. I let go of her wrist and stepped back to the microphone. I motioned for Stone. He walked down the center aisle, the black ledger held against his chest like a holy book. The room was so quiet you could hear the leather of his boots creaking. He walked up the stairs and handed me the book. Morgan's eyes locked onto it. The color drained from her face so fast, she looked like a corpse. She knew exactly what this was. Ladies and gentlemen, I said, my voice calm but carrying a dangerous weight. Mrs. Vane was about to tell you that she is stepping down for personal reasons. She was going to tell you that this company is profitable and strong. I opened the ledger. But this is the truth. Security. Morgan screamed, her composure finally shattering. Get him off the stage. He stole that. That's private property. The security guards at the doors didn't move. They were watching me. They were watching the man who signed their new checks. This is a shadow ledger. I continued, holding it up. For the investors in the front row, you might want to listen closely. This book details a supply chain that doesn't exist. Ghost vendors. Fake invoices. Shell companies. I turned a page. It shows that for the last 5 years, Morgan Vane has been laundering money for an organized crime syndicate operating out of the port of Miami. The room erupted. Investors jumped to their feet. Reporters started shouting questions. Flashbulbs exploded like strobes. Lies. Morgan shrieked, lunging for the book. He's lying. He's a disgruntled son. His father is a senile old fool. I easily sidestepped her. She stumbled, catching herself on the podium. And here's the best part, I said, cutting through the noise. She wasn't just laundering money. She was using your factory trucks to move it. Those urgent deliveries you drivers made at 3 a.m.? You weren't moving textiles. You were moving cash. The truck drivers in the back row looked at each other, horror dawning on their faces. They had been unwitting mules. You have no proof. Morgan yelled, her voice cracking. That's just a book. Anyone could have written it. You're right, I said. A book isn't enough. I looked toward the back of the hall. The double doors opened again. But it wasn't police. It wasn't the FBI. It was a woman in a wheelchair, pushed by a nurse. She was frail, her face gaunt, but her eyes were sharp. The crowd parted for her. Morgan looked at the woman and gasped. She took a step back, knocking over a glass of water on the podium. It shattered. No, Morgan whispered. You're dead. I was told you were dead. I spoke into the mic. Everyone, please welcome Mrs. Eliza Vance, the original owner of this factory. The woman Morgan claimed to have bought out 10 years ago. Eliza didn't need a microphone. Her voice was weak, but in the silent hall, it carried like a bell. She didn't buy me out. Eliza said, pointing a shaking finger at Morgan. She forged my signature. She committed me to a care facility and paid the doctors to keep me sedated. She stole my life. The crowd gasped. This wasn't just corporate fraud anymore. This was evil. I found her, I said, looking at the investors. My team located her 3 hours ago in a private sanitarium 3 counties over. We showed the doctors the audit. They were very eager to release her once they realized they were accomplices to kidnapping. Morgan looked around wildly. She was trapped. The investors were looking at her with disgust. The workers were looking at her with hatred. You set up, she muttered. Then, her eyes snapped to something, or someone, in the front row. A man in a gray suit stood up slowly. He hadn't said a word the whole time. He was tall, with cold eyes and a scar running through his eyebrow. I recognized him from the intelligence briefings. Victor the Vulture Kane, the cartel liaison. The man Morgan was laundering money for. He looked at Morgan. He didn't look angry. He looked disappointed. Morgan, he said. His voice was smooth, terrifying. Is this true? Did you keep a ledger? A written record of our arrangement. Morgan started shaking violently. She wasn't afraid of the police. She was afraid of him. Victor, please. He stole it. I kept it safe. You wrote it down, Victor said, buttoning his jacket. Rule number 1, Morgan. Never write it down. He turned to leave. Stop him, I ordered. My security team moved to block the aisle, but Victor's own men, 3 huge bodyguards, stepped in their way. Major Hunter, Victor said, pausing. You're a soldier. You know when a battle is lost. You have the factory. You have the woman. Don't start a war you can't finish. The war is already started, I said. And you're on my battlefield. I nodded to Stone. Stone pulled a flashbang grenade from his jacket, pulled the pin, and tossed it into the aisle between Victor and the exit. Bang! The explosion of light and sound disoriented everyone. Screams filled the hall. Smoke filled the air. In the chaos, Victor's men reached for their weapons. Federal agents. Nobody moved. From the side exits, a dozen men in tactical gear burst in. FBI. DEA. They had been waiting for my signal. I wasn't just buying a factory. I was coordinating a joint task force sting operation. Victor froze. He looked at the agents, then at me. He smiled, a chilling, humorless smile. He raised his hands. Well played, Major. Agents swarmed him, cuffing him and his men. But amidst the chaos, I realized something. The podium was empty. I looked around through the smoke. Morgan was gone. Stone, I shouted. Where is she? She slipped out the backstage exit, sir. During the flashbang, I sprinted across the stage, Dad following as fast as he could. I kicked open the rear door. The alleyway behind the factory was empty, except for a trail of high-heel scuff marks in the dirt leading toward the parking lot. I heard an engine roar. I ran around the corner just in time to see the red convertible, boss lady, screeching toward the exit gate. She's running. Dad yelled, out of breath. She won't get far, I said, reaching for my radio. Gate control, seal the... I stopped. The convertible wasn't heading for the main gate. It was heading straight for the loading dock ramp. She was trying to jump the curb and hit the highway access road. She's going to kill someone, Stone yelled, running up beside me. Morgan's car hit the ramp at 60 miles an hour. It flew into the air, cleared the fence, and landed hard on the access road, sparks flying as the suspension shattered. But she kept going, swerving into traffic, cars honking and screeching to avoid her. Get the SUV, I ordered. Hunter, wait. Dad grabbed my arm. Let the police handle it. She has the backup drive, I said, watching the red car weave through traffic. Clara told me. She keeps a digital copy of the ledger in her purse. If she destroys that drive, Victor's lawyers might walk. We need that evidence. I looked at my dad. I have to go. Then I'm coming with you, he said. Dad, no. It's dangerous. She slapped me. Hunter, he said, his eyes hard. And she stole from my friends. I'm not watching this on the news. I'm finishing it. I didn't argue. I didn't have time. Get in. We jumped into the lead armored SUV. Stone took the wheel. I jumped in the passenger seat. Dad climbed in the back. "Follow that red car," I said. "And don't let her reach the bridge." The engine roared. We peeled out of the lot, sirens blaring. The chase was on. The black SUV tore down the highway access road, the speedometer climbing past 90. Stone was a hell of a driver, calm, precise, weaving through the mid-morning traffic like he was threading a needle. Ahead of us, the red convertible was a blur of erratic motion. Morgan wasn't driving. She was fleeing. She clipped the bumper of a delivery truck, sending sparks flying, but she didn't slow down. "She's heading for the interstate," Stone said, his eyes locked on the road. "If she gets into open traffic, we might lose her. Or she'll cause a pileup." "She's not going to the interstate," I said, watching her swerve toward an exit ramp. "She's going to the marina." "The marina?" Dad asked from the back seat, gripping the handle above the door. "Why there?" "Because she has a yacht," I said. "And international waters are only 12 miles out. If she gets on that boat, she thinks she can disappear." Stone yanked the wheel, drifting the heavy SUV onto the exit ramp. We were closing the gap. I could see Morgan now. Her top was down, her hair whipping around her face in a chaotic frenzy. She was holding her phone to her ear with one hand, steering with the other. "She's calling for an extraction," I muttered. "Victor's men might be gone, but the cartel has layers. We can't let her reach the water." "I can pit her," Stone said. "Spin her out." "No," I said. "Too much civilian traffic. We do this clean." We roared through the city streets, running red lights, the siren clearing the path. We were 2 blocks from the marina entrance when Morgan made a mistake. She tried to take a sharp turn onto the dock road too fast. The convertible fishtailed, tires screaming against the asphalt. She overcorrected, slamming into a row of parked construction barrels. The car spun 180 degrees and came to a halt in a cloud of orange plastic and dust. "Now!" I shouted. Stone slammed the brakes, sliding the SUV sideways to block the road. I was out of the door before we stopped moving. "Stay here, Dad," I yelled. I drew my sidearm, a tactical polymer pistol I kept in the glove box. Not to shoot, but to control. Morgan was scrambling out of the wrecked convertible. She stumbled, falling onto the pavement, clutching her designer purse like a lifeline. She looked up and saw me. "Stay back," she screamed, backing away toward the water's edge. "I'll throw it. I swear I'll throw it." She held the purse over the railing. Below her, the dark, oily water of the harbor churned. "There's a digital drive in there, isn't there?" I said, walking slowly toward her, gun lowered but ready. "The backup of the ledger. The one that proves everything." "You ruined my life," she sobbed, her makeup running in black streaks down her face. "I built this empire. I did what I had to do." "You didn't build anything," I said, stepping closer. "You stole it from Eliza. You stole it from my dad. You stole it from every worker who trusted you. They're sheep," she spat. "They need a shepherd. I gave them jobs. You gave them crumbs while you ate the cake. Don't come any closer." She leaned dangerously over the railing. "I'll drop it. Then you have nothing. No proof against Victor's bosses. No proof against me." I stopped. She was right. Without that drive, the physical ledger might not be enough. Lawyers could argue it was forged. We needed the digital metadata. "What do you want, Morgan?" I asked. "I want a plane," she said, her chest heaving. "I want a flight to Switzerland. And $5 million wired to an account. Do that, and I give you the drive." "You're in no position to negotiate." "I am holding the evidence," she shrieked. Suddenly, a voice came from behind me. "Morgan!" It wasn't me. It was Dad. I turned. He had gotten out of the car. He was walking past the police line that was just forming down the street. He looked tired, but he wasn't looking at the ground anymore. "Dad, get back," I warned. "No," he said. He walked right past me. He walked until he was 10 feet from her. "Oliver." Morgan blinked, confused. "Get away from me, you pathetic old man." "I'm not pathetic," Dad said softly. "I raised a son who turned out to be a hero." "What did you raise, Morgan?" "Just a bank account." "Shut up." "You slapped me," Dad said. You humiliated me. And for a moment, I believed you. I believed I was worthless. He took another step. Stay back. She dangled the purse further over the water. Go ahead, Dad said. Drop it. I froze. Dad, what are you doing? Drop it, Dad repeated, his voice gaining strength. Throw it in the ocean. Destroy the evidence. Maybe you'll stay out of prison for a few months. Maybe a year. He looked her dead in the eye. But you'll still be you. You'll still be the woman who stole from a sick old lady. You'll still be the coward who hit a man who couldn't hit back. And no amount of money in Switzerland will ever change that. Morgan's hand trembled. She looked at the water. She looked at Dad. For the first time, her arrogance cracked. She wasn't facing a billionaire or a soldier. She was facing the man she thought was nothing, and he was standing taller than her. She stammered. Give it to me, Morgan, Dad said, holding out his hand. Not for Hunter. Not for the police. For your own soul. Do one decent thing before it ends. The sirens were getting louder. Police cars were boxing us in. A helicopter chopped the air overhead. Morgan looked at the purse. She looked at Dad's open, calloused hand, the hand of a worker. She let out a sob, a broken, ugly sound. She slumped against the railing. Slowly, she lowered the purse. She didn't drop it in the water. She tossed it onto the pavement at Dad's feet. I hate you, she whispered. I know, Dad said. He picked up the purse. Hands in the air. Get on the ground. Now, officers swarmed the area. Stone moved in, zip-tying Morgan's hands behind her back. She didn't fight. She just stared at the ground, defeated. I walked over to Dad. He was holding the purse, looking at the police lights reflecting off the water. You okay? I asked. He handed me the purse. I think I'm ready for that pizza now. I smiled, putting a hand on his shoulder. Pepperoni and jalapeno. We watched as they loaded Morgan into the back of a squad car. She looked small. The boss lady was gone. But as the car drove away, my phone rang. It wasn't Grant. It wasn't Stone. It was a blocked number. I answered it. This is Major Hunter. Major, a distorted voice said. It sounded mechanical, cold. You made quite a mess today. Victor is in custody. Morgan is in custody. You have the ledger. Who is this? I asked, signaling Stone to trace the call. You won the battle, the voice said. But you took something that belongs to us. That drive contains more than just financial records. It contains names. Names of people much higher than Victor. Good, I said. I look forward to meeting them. You don't meet these people, Major. You just disappear. Is that a threat? It's a forecast. Enjoy your victory lap. It will be short. The line went dead. I looked at the phone. Then I looked at the purse in my hand. Dad noticed my expression. What's wrong? Is it over? I looked at him. The bruise on his face, the relief in his eyes. He thought the war was won. He thought the bad guys were in jail. Yeah, Dad. I lied, slipping the phone into my pocket. It's over. But as we walked back to the SUV, I gripped the purse tighter. It wasn't over. We had just cut the head off a snake, only to find out it was a hydra. And now, they knew my name. The police lights faded in the rearview mirror as we drove back to the factory. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving behind a cold, hard clarity. Morgan was gone. Victor was in cuffs. But the phone call, that distorted, mechanical voice, played on a loop in my head. You don't meet these people, Major. You just disappear. I looked at the purse sitting on the center console. Inside was the digital drive. The nuclear football of this entire operation. If the voice on the phone was right, this wasn't just about money laundering. It was about something bigger. Political corruption? International arms deals? I needed to know what was on that drive before I handed it to the FBI. We're not going to the police station yet, I told Stone. Sir. Stone glanced at me in the mirror. Protocol says all evidence goes directly to the secure lockup. This isn't evidence yet, I said. It's intelligence. Take us back to the factory. I need to use the secure server in the CEO's office. Dad looked at me from the back seat. Hunter, you promised. You said it was over. I just need to check something, Dad. It'll take 10 minutes. Then we go get that pizza. I promise. We pulled up to the factory gates. The news vans were still there, but the crowd had thinned. The workers were back inside, the hum of the machines starting up again, this time under new management. I walked into the lobby, Stone flanking me with the purse. We went straight to the elevator. The CEO's office was a mess. The door I'd kicked in was propped open. The safe was drilled open, debris scattered on the floor. I sat down at Morgan's desk, my desk now. I booted up her computer. It was password protected, of course. Stone, give me the drive. I plugged the USB drive into the port. I ran my decryption software, the same code I used to crack insurgent networks in the Middle East. The screen flashed black, then green code cascaded down like rain. Password bypass complete. Files began to populate the screen. Thousands of them. Folder, payroll skim folder, Cayman accounts folder, Victor payments, I ignored those. I was looking for the names the voice had mentioned. I found a hidden partition labeled simply, Project Olympus. I clicked it. A list of PDFs opened. I clicked the first one. It was a blueprint, but not for textiles. It was a schematic for a guidance chip. A military-grade component used in drone warfare. My blood ran cold. What is it? Stone asked, seeing my face. She wasn't just laundering money, I whispered. She was manufacturing illegal tech. Right here, in a textile factory. I clicked the next file. It was a shipping manifest. Item, 5,000 guidance units destination. Redacted, buyer. Redacted. I scrolled down to the bottom of the invoice. There was a signature. It wasn't Morgan's. It wasn't Victor's. It was a government official. A senator. Senator Julian Thorne. I sat back, the air rushing out of my lungs. Thorne was on the Defense Appropriations Committee. He was the guy who decided which companies got military contracts. He was using Morgan to build black market weapons parts, hiding them inside shipments of Army uniforms, and selling them off the books. This goes all the way to D.C., I said. Suddenly, the fire alarm blared. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Fire, Dad asked, looking around nervously. No, Stone said, drawing his weapon. That's not a fire alarm. That's the building lockdown protocol. The heavy steel shutters on the windows slammed down automatically. The door to the office clicked, the magnetic locks engaging. We're trapped, Stone said. My computer screen flickered. A message appeared in red text. Unauthorized access detected. Data purge initiated. 60 seconds. They're wiping the drive remotely. I shouted. They knew we plugged it in. Can you stop it? Dad asked. I'm trying. My fingers flew across the keyboard. I was trying to build a firewall to isolate the drive, but the virus was aggressive. It was eating the files, deleting them one by one. Project Olympus, deleted. Manifests, deleted. The evidence is vanishing. I yelled. Hunter. Stone shouted. Look out. The glass window overlooking the factory floor shattered inward. 3 men in black tactical gear swung in on ropes from the ceiling rafters. They weren't police. They weren't FBI. They were cleaners. Mercenaries sent to destroy the physical evidence. And us. Get down. I shoved Dad behind the heavy oak desk. Stone opened fire. Bang. Bang. One mercenary dropped. The other 2 took cover behind the leather couches, returning fire with silenced submachine guns. Bullets chewed up the drywall, sending plaster dust into the air. Give us the drive, one of them shouted. And you walk away. Not a chance. I yelled back, pulling my own pistol. I looked at the computer screen. Data purge. 80% complete. I need 10 seconds. I yelled to Stone. I can save the core file. You don't have 10 seconds. Stone fired a suppression burst. They're flanking. I looked at the drive. If I pulled it out now, the data might corrupt. If I left it in, the virus would erase it. I had to make a choice. Save the file or save my team. A bullet struck the monitor, shattering the screen. Sparks flew. Hunter. Dad screamed. One of the mercenaries vaulted over the couch, aiming his weapon right at my father. I didn't think. I didn't hesitate. I abandoned the computer. I stood up and fired 2 rounds. Center mass. The mercenary crumpled backward, crashing into the coffee table. Silence fell. The third mercenary, seeing his team down, threw a smoke grenade and grappled back up toward the ceiling vents. He's running. Stone yelled. Let him go, I said, breathing hard. Check the perimeter. I looked down at the computer. The tower was smoking. The screen was dead. I pulled the USB drive out. It was hot to the touch. Did you get it? Dad asked, his voice shaking as he peeked over the desk. Did you save the names? I looked at the charred drive. I didn't know. The purge had been at 90% when the screen died. I don't know, I said. But we survived. Stone walked over, kicking a weapon away from one of the downed men. These guys are pros, Hunter. Private military contractors. High-end. Thorne's personal cleanup crew, I muttered. I put the drive in my pocket. Even if the files were damaged, the hardware might still have fragments. Enough to hang a senator? Maybe. Maybe not. But one thing was certain. The quiet revenge was over. We weren't just fighting a factory boss anymore. We were at war with the United States government. We have to leave, I said. Now? This building isn't safe. Where do we go? Dad asked. Home. No, I said. Home is the first place they'll look. We're going underground. I grabbed my phone. It had no signal. The building was jammed. Stone, get us to the extraction point. Plan Charlie. Plan Charlie. Stone raised an eyebrow. That's the nuclear option, sir. We just got shot at in a textile factory, I said, reloading my weapon. I think we're past the nuclear option. I looked at Dad. He was pale, but he was standing. He wasn't the broken old man I found in the dark yesterday. He was a survivor. Dad, I need you to trust me. We're going to have to disappear for a while. He looked at the shattered office, the bodies on the floor, the smoking computer. I trust you, son, he said. Just tell me one thing. What? Did we win? I looked at the drive in my hand. Not yet, I said. But we're about to change the rules of the game. We abandoned the SUVs. They were tracked. We took a beat-up delivery van from the loading dock, one of the few vehicles without GPS Stone drove. Dad sat on a crate of unstitched fabric in the back. I sat shotgun, watching the mirrors, waiting for the tale that I knew was coming. We drove for 3 hours, heading deep into the Appalachian foothills. Plan Charlie was an old safe house I'd bought under a shell company years ago, a hunting cabin completely off the grid. No internet, no cell towers, just trees and silence. When we finally parked, the sun was setting, painting the sky a bruised purple that reminded me of Dad's face. Are we safe here? Dad asked, climbing out of the van stiffly. For now, I said. Stone will set up a perimeter. I need to check the drive. Inside the cabin, I pulled out my field laptop, a ruggedized, military-spec machine shielded against EMPs and viruses. I plugged in the charred USB drive. My heart hammered against my ribs. If the data was gone, we were fugitives with no leverage. Senator Thorne would paint us as terrorists who attacked a factory. We'd be hunted down and silenced. I ran the recovery diagnostic. Scanning Sector 1. Corrupted. Scanning Sector 2. Corrupted. Come on, I whispered. Scanning Sector 3. Recoverable. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. The main database was fried, but the cache, the temporary files, was intact. I opened the folder. It wasn't the blueprints. It wasn't the shipping manifest. It was audio files. Voice memos. Morgan, it turned out, was paranoid. She had recorded every meeting, every phone call. I clicked on a file dated 2 days ago. Morgan's voice. Senator, I can't do it. The audit is coming up. If they look at the inventory. Senator Thorne's voice. You'll do what you're told, Morgan. Or do you want your son to find out about your little gambling problem in Vegas? Or maybe we should tell him about the hit and run in 1998. I froze. Morgan didn't have a son. I looked at Dad. He was making coffee in the small kitchenette, his hands trembling slightly. I clicked another file. Morgan, he's back. Oliver's son. He's asking questions. Thorne, handle it. Break the father. The son will leave. Morgan, I already slapped the old man. I humiliated him. But Hunter, he's different. He scares me. Thorne, he's a soldier. Soldiers follow orders. If he gets in the way, activate the asset. Morgan. Which asset? Thorne. His lawyer. Grant. My blood turned to ice. Grant. Grant, who had handled the money transfer. Grant, who knew where we were. Grant, who I had trusted with my life and my fortune. Grant is the mole, I whispered. What? Stone asked, walking in from the porch. Thorne owns Grant. That's how they knew we were at the factory. That's how they knew to wipe the drive. Grant gave them the access codes. My phone, my satellite phone, the only one that worked out here, buzzed. It was a text. From Grant. Hunter, I know you're at the cabin. Thorne has a drone in the air. You have 5 minutes. I stared at the screen. Was he warning me? Or mocking me? Then, a second text. I'm sorry. They have my daughter. Check the basement. Stone. I shouted. Basement. Now. Stone kicked open the cellar door. We rushed down the wooden stairs, weapons drawn. It wasn't a trap. It was a server rack. This cabin. Stone looked around. This isn't just a safe house, is it? It's a relay node, I realized. I built this place to bounce signals. Grant knew that. He knew I'd come here. On top of the server rack sat a single file folder. It wasn't digital. It was paper. I opened it. It was a resignation letter. Grant's resignation. And underneath it, a handwritten note. Asterisk Hunter, I can't undo what I did. I gave them the codes. But I didn't give them the key. The encryption key for the guidance chips is biometric. They need Morgan's fingerprint. Or yours. They are bringing Morgan here. They broke her out of police transport an hour ago. They think you have the master key. They're coming to kill us all. G**, they broke her out? Dad's voice came from the top of the stairs. Morgan is coming here? They're bringing her to unlock the system, I said. And then they're going to burn this place to the ground with us inside. I heard the sound then. The low thrum of a helicopter rotor. They're early, Stone said. Get Dad to the bunker, I ordered. No, Dad said. He walked down the stairs. He looked calm. Strange calm. I'm tired of running, Hunter. I'm tired of hiding in basements. Dad, this is a kill team. Let them come, Dad said. You said we needed leverage? If Morgan is with them, she's our leverage. The helicopter noise grew deafening. Dust fell from the ceiling rafters. They're landing in the clearing, Stone reported, looking at a tactical monitor on his wrist. 6 hostiles. 1 VIP. It's Morgan. Kill the lights, I said. The cabin went pitch black. We waited in the dark. The silence of the forest returned, heavier than before. Then, the crunch of boots on gravel. Hunter. Morgan's voice screamed from outside. She sounded terrified. Hunter, please. They're going to kill me. Open the door. Don't listen, I whispered. It's bait. We know you're in there, Major. A new voice. A commander. Senator Thorne sends his regards. Send out the girl in the drive, and we'll make it quick. I looked at Stone. He nodded. We knew the play. Dad, I whispered. Stay here. No, Dad said. He picked up a flare gun from the emergency kit on the wall. I have a job to do. Before I could stop him, Dad walked up the stairs. He kicked the front door open. Dad, I screamed. Dad stood in the doorway, silhouetted by the moonlight. He raised the flare gun. Hey, he shouted at the shadows. You looking for the boss? Fire, the commander shouted. But Dad didn't fire at them. He fired straight up into the air. Whoosh. The red flare turned the night into blood. It hung in the sky, illuminating the clearing. And in that light, we saw them. 6 mercenaries. And Morgan, on her knees, a gun to her head. But the flare revealed something else. Hundreds of silver eyes reflecting in the trees. Wolves? No. Cameras. Dad had activated the perimeter surveillance system. But he'd routed it. I'm live streaming. Dad yelled, holding up his phone. To YouTube. To Facebook. To the news. 2 million people are watching this right now. The mercenaries froze. They looked at the flare, then at the phone. They were black ops. They couldn't operate in the light. Abort, the commander screamed. We are burned. Abort. They shoved Morgan to the ground and sprinted back toward the helicopter. They couldn't be seen executing civilians on a live stream. The helicopter roared to life, lifting off in a panic, leaving Morgan behind in the dirt. I ran out onto the porch. Stone followed, covering the retreat. Morgan was sobbing in the grass, her white suit ruined, her hands bound. Dad walked down the steps. He lowered the flare gun. He looked at his phone. 0 viewers, he muttered. I couldn't get a signal. I looked at him. You bluffed them? I played poker with you for 20 years, he grinned shakily. I know how to bluff. I looked at Morgan. She looked up at us. She was shivering. Broken. Help me, she whispered. Please. They'll come back. I walked over to her. I cut the zip ties on her wrists with my knife. She rubbed her wrists, looking at me with fear. Thank you. Don't thank me, I said. I pulled her to her feet. You have a choice, Morgan. You can run into those woods. Maybe you make it. Maybe Thorne finds you. Or, she asked, or you come inside. You sit in front of that camera. And when we actually get a signal, you tell the world everything. You name Thorne. You name the buyers. You burn the whole house down. She looked at the dark woods. She looked at Dad, the man she had slapped, who had just saved her life with a lie. He was going to kill me, she whispered. Thorne. He signed the order. Yes, I said. She looked at Dad. I'm sorry, Oliver. Dad didn't smile. He just nodded. Make it right. She took a deep breath. The arrogance was gone. The fear was gone. All that was left was cold, hard resolve. Give me the microphone, she said. I'm ready to talk. The live stream went out at dawn. We didn't use YouTube. We used a ghost frequency, hijacking the emergency broadcast signal for the tri-state area. It was Stone's idea. If we're going to burn it down, he said, let's make sure everyone smells the smoke. Morgan sat in a wooden chair in the middle of the cabin living room. The morning light filtered through the dusty windows, illuminating her face. She looked stripped down, no makeup, hair messy, wearing one of Dad's oversized flannel shirts because her white suit was torn. She didn't look like a CEO. She looked human. I stood behind the camera. Dad sat on the couch, arms crossed, watching. We're living 3, 2, 1, Stone whispered. Morgan looked into the lens. Her voice didn't shake. My name is Morgan Vane, she began. For the last 10 years, I was the CEO of Morgan Textiles. But I wasn't just making uniforms. I was making weapons. She laid it all out. The guidance chips, the money laundering, the Cayman accounts. And then, she named him. The operation was directed by Senator Julian Thorne. He used my factory as a black site to bypass congressional oversight. He threatened my life. He threatened my employees. She paused, looking off camera at Dad. And I let him. I became a monster to survive a monster. I hurt good people. I hurt Oliver. And for that, I will spend the rest of my life in prison. But I won't go alone. Thorne is coming with me. She held up the charred USB drive, the one I thought was useless. This is the key, she said. It contains the biometric data. Thorne's fingerprint is on every single illegal transaction. You can't wipe a fingerprint. The feed cut. Silence filled the cabin. It's done, I said. Morgan slumped in the chair, exhaling a breath she seemed to have been holding for a decade. What happens now? Now, Stone said, checking his perimeter sensors. We wait for the cavalry. But the cavalry that arrived wasn't mercenaries. It was the National Guard. Within an hour, 4 transport helicopters touched down in the clearing. Men in uniforms swarmed the cabin. But they didn't have their weapons raised. A colonel stepped out of the lead chopper. He walked up the porch steps. He looked at me, saw the major rank on my shoulders, and saluted. Major Hunter, he said. We saw the broadcast. The president has authorized a full inquiry. Senator Thorne was arrested 10 minutes ago at his estate in D.C. attempting to flee the country. I returned the salute. And the hostiles? The mercenary team was intercepted. They're in custody. The colonel looked at Morgan. Mrs. Vane, you're coming with us. Protective custody until the trial. Morgan stood up. She walked to the door. She stopped in front of Dad. Oliver, she said, I know an apology doesn't fix your face. Or the way I treated you. No, Dad said. It doesn't. I signed the deed over, she said quietly. Before the broadcast, I transferred my remaining assets, the legal ones, to the factory trust. The workers own it now. All of it. Dad looked surprised. Why? Because a boss should pay her debts, she said. She walked out to the helicopter, flanked by soldiers. She didn't look back. 1 month later, the factory was humming, but the sound was different. It wasn't the frantic, terrified pace of before. It was steady. Rhythm. I stood on the catwalk overlooking the floor. The new ventilation system was humming, keeping the air cool. The safety rails were fixed. Hey, boss. I looked down. Henderson waved from the floor. He wasn't fired. He was the new floor manager. I'm not the boss. I yelled back, smiling. He is. I pointed to the office. The glass walls were gone, replaced by an open-door policy. Sitting at the desk, a modest wooden one, not glass, was Dad. Oliver, the chairman of the employee trust. He was on the phone, laughing. He looked 10 years younger. The bruise on his face had faded to a faint shadow, a battle scar he wore with pride. I walked down the stairs. Dad hung up the phone. That was the lawyer, he said. The class action suit against Thorne's estate settled. Every worker is getting a payout. Plus the pension is fully restored. And Grant? I asked. Dad's smile faded slightly. Grant took a plea deal. 5 years. He testified against Thorne. He sent a letter. Said he's sorry. He saved us in the end, I said. With that note. People are complicated, Hunter, Dad said. Good people do bad things when they're scared. Bad people do good things when they're cornered. He stood up and walked over to the window. You leaving soon? He asked. My leave is up, I said. The Army wants me back. They offered me a promotion. Colonel. They want me to run a new unit. Anti-corruption. Fitting, Dad chuckled. But I'm not taking it, I said. Dad turned around. What? Why? It's your life, Hunter. No, I said. This is my life. I'm retiring, Dad. I'm done with wars. I'm done with shadows. So what are you going to do? Run a textile factory? Maybe, I shrugged. Or maybe I'll finally take you to Hawaii. You still owe me that pizza, by the way. Dad laughed. Hawaii sounds good. But first. He reached into his drawer and pulled out an envelope. This came for you. From the prison. It's from Morgan. I took the envelope. It was heavy. She's facing 20 years, Dad said. But she wanted you to have this. I opened it. Inside was a single photo. Old, faded. Polaroid. It was a picture of 3 people standing in front of this very factory 30 years ago. One was a young Morgan, looking hopeful. One was my father, young and strong. And the third was a woman I recognized instantly. My mother. She knew Mom. I asked, stunned. Dad sighed. He sat on the edge of the desk. That's the part of the story I never told you, Hunter. The part Morgan kept secret until the end. What part? Morgan and your mother were best friends in high school, Dad said. They both applied for a scholarship to design school. There was only one spot. I looked at the photo. They looked happy. Your mother won it, Dad said. Morgan didn't. Your mother went on to meet me. We had you. Morgan stayed here. She got bitter. She got hard. She married rich, took over the factory, and she spent 30 years hating us for the life she thought we stole from her. So the slap. I realized. It wasn't about the salary. No, Dad said softly. It was jealousy. She saw me, poor, struggling, but happy with my son. And she hated that she had all the money in the world, but no one to share it with. I looked at the photo again. I turned it over. On the back, in shaky handwriting, Morgan had written, I wanted to break you, Oliver. Because you had the one thing I couldn't buy, a legacy. I put the photo in my pocket. She was right, I said. She couldn't buy it. I looked at my dad. The man who stood up to a billionaire. The man who saved a life with a flare gun. Come on, Dad, I said. Let's go home. We walked out of the factory together. The sun was shining. The workers were singing over the noise of the machines. And for the first time in a long time, the world felt clean. The flight to Hawaii was booked for Friday. Dad was packing his suitcase with the excitement of a kid on Christmas morning. He'd bought 3 different floral shirts and a pair of sunglasses that were far too large for his face. I was sitting on the front porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The neighborhood was quiet. The black SUVs were gone. The reporters were gone. It was just us again. But there was one loose end. One question that kept itching at the back of my mind. Morgan's letter. I wanted to break you because you had a legacy. It felt incomplete. Jealousy was a strong motivator, sure. But enough to risk treason? Enough to launder millions for a cartel? There had to be another piece to the puzzle. My phone buzzed. It was Stone. Hunter, you need to see this. I was scrubbing the final metadata from Morgan's cloud server before handing it to the feds. I found a scheduled email. It was set to send to you in the event of her arrest. Forward it, I typed back. A moment later, an email popped up on my phone. Subject: the truth about Oliver. I opened it. Hunter, if you're reading this, I'm probably in a cell. You think you won. You think you saved your saint of a father from the evil witch. And maybe you did. But you need to know why I really hated him. It wasn't just the scholarship. It wasn't just your mother. 30 years ago, when the factory was failing, your father didn't just work the line. He was the foreman. And one night, there was an accident. A chemical spill. To save the company from bankruptcy, the old owners needed a scapegoat. They needed someone to sign the safety logs, to take the blame for the negligence. Your father refused. He was noble, right? Always noble. But because he refused to sign, the insurance didn't pay out. The factory laid off 500 people that winter. My father was one of them. He lost his job, then his house, then his life to a bottle of whiskey. I didn't slap Oliver because he was poor. I slapped him because his integrity cost my family everything. I spent my whole life building this empire to prove that I could save the workers he abandoned. I became a monster to fix his mistake. Ask him, Hunter. Ask him about the winter of '95. Morgan, I stared at the screen. My hands went cold. The winter of '95. I was 5 years old. I remembered we moved houses that year. I remembered Dad crying at the kitchen table. I stood up and walked back into the house. Dad was holding up a Hawaiian shirt, grinning. What do you think? Too much orange. Dad, I said quietly. He saw my face. The smile dropped. What is it? Is it the trial? No, I said. It's about 1995. The chemical spill. Dad went still. The color drained from his face, faster than it had when Morgan slapped him. He slowly lowered the shirt. Who told you about that? Morgan left a letter, I said. She said you refused to sign the logs. She said 500 people lost their jobs because of it, including her father. Dad sat down on the edge of the couch. He looked old, older than I'd ever seen him. Is it true? I asked. Yes, he whispered. It's true. Why didn't you tell me? Because it's complicated, Hunter. The owners wanted me to lie. They wanted me to say the safety checks were done when they weren't. If I signed those logs, yes, the insurance would have paid out. The factory would have stayed open. But if I signed them, Dad looked up, his eyes wet. I would have been covering up a leak that was poisoning the groundwater. The runoff was going into the elementary school's water supply. I froze. The school? I asked. My school. Your school? Dad nodded. And Morgan's little sister's school. If I had signed those papers to save the jobs, I would have been poisoning a generation of children. So I refused. I blew the whistle. The factory closed. People lost their jobs. People hated me for it. He took a shaky breath. Morgan's father lost his job, yes. But his daughter, Morgan's sister, didn't get sick. You didn't get sick. I traded 500 jobs for 500 lives. And I have lived with the guilt of those layoffs every single day. I looked at him. Morgan didn't know. She thought he was stubborn. She thought he was self-righteous. She didn't know he was a hero. She hated you for saving her sister, I said. She didn't know, Dad said. The groundwater report was sealed. I never told anyone. I just took the hate. I walked over and sat next to him. I put my arm around his shoulders. You're not just a good man, Dad, I said. You're the best man I know. I tried, he whispered. I just tried to do the right thing. You did. And now, we're going to fix the rest. I pulled out my phone. What are you doing? Dad asked. I'm sending a reply, I said. To Morgan's lawyer. I typed a message. Tell Morgan the truth about 95. Send her the sealed groundwater report. Let her know that the man she hated saved her sister's life. I hit send. There, I said. Now the war is really over. Dad looked at the suitcase. So? Hawaii. I smiled. Hawaii. We spent 2 weeks on the island. Dad learned to surf, badly, and ate enough shrimp to feed a battalion. He laughed more in those 14 days than he had in 14 years. When we got back, we visited the prison. Morgan sat behind the glass. She looked different in the orange jumpsuit. The anger was gone. She looked lighter. She picked up the phone. I read the report, she said softly. Her eyes were red. I know, Dad said. You saved my sister, she whispered. And I slapped you for it. You were hurting, Dad said. Pain makes us blind, Morgan. I forgive you. She put her hand against the glass. Dad put his hand against his side. Thank you, Oliver, she mouthed. We walked out of the prison into the bright afternoon sun. So, Dad said, putting on his oversized sunglasses. What's the plan now, Colonel? I mean, civilian hunter. I looked at the factory in the distance, smoke rising from the stacks, clean smoke this time. I think I'm going to write a book, I said. A book? About what? About a factory boss, I smiled. And a billionaire army son. And the man who taught them both what honor really means. Dad laughed and clapped me on the back. Well, make sure you mention the pizza. I will, Dad. I will. What a journey that was. We saw betrayal. We saw justice. And in the end, we saw the truth that heals. It wasn't just about revenge. It was about understanding the hidden sacrifices our parents make for us. So, I have to ask you, if you were in Oliver's shoes in 1995, would you have signed the papers to save 500 jobs, or would you have let the factory close to save the children from the water? It's a tough choice. Let me know what you would have done in the comments below. I read every single one. Also, please take a moment to comment your city or country. I love seeing how far this family reaches. If this story touched your heart, please gently hit that like button and subscribe. It helps us bring more of these epic, emotional thrillers to you. We are building a community here, and I want you to be a part of it. And one last thing, what kind of stories do you want to hear next? Do you prefer military revenge, like this one? Cheating/relationship drama underdog billionaire reveals? Let me know in the comments. I'll write the next story based on what you want. Until next time, stay safe, stay strong, and remember, the truth always wins.